Hi there, this is Jimmy Roberts. When it comes to the game of golf, there is no place on earth like the metropolitan area. It's always been a special place for the game of golf and also for golf writing. Some of the most esteemed and accomplished journalists covering the game work here. Now, you'll get a chance to hear them right here on the Metropolitan Golf Writers Association podcast. Enjoy.
Matt Ward, senior editor of Golf Today and a part of the top100golfcourses.com website, who's evaluated more courses than I can list. That's for sure. Welcome to the Metropolitan Golf Writers Association podcast. How are we doing today?
Anthony, it's a pleasure to be with you.
I want to get started because you and I now we've spoken before. We've gotten to know each other. You've been a part of golf in the metropolitan area for a long time. I'm just kind of curious if you could just fill us in on how you got started, where you cut your teeth, in the golf space.
Well, that introduction started with my father. My father's family was from the Bronx, and I cut my teeth at Van Cortlandt Park, which is obviously the oldest public golf course in the United States. And I always say kiddingly, I played a place where grass grew by accident, not by design. And,
That's a great line.
Van Cortlandt was a great entree. I mean, you get to meet everybody. I mean, they all had one common link, though. They all loved the game. You met many of those same people. My family then came into northern New Jersey, and I grew up playing in a variety of different tournaments. I played in a lot of the section events that were here, and then I went to college at the University of South Carolina, and after being sports editor of the university newspaper, I was able to get an internship in covering the Masters. As many people know, Columbia is very short distance from Augusta. It's about 75 miles. So I was doing affiliated work with WIS Radio, which was an NBC affiliate. And that was really my entree into seeing something. And, Anthony, the first time you see Augusta National, it's like when the Wizard of Oz goes from black and white to color. It's just there's no way to describe that feeling, and then to finally be at a place that you've heard so much about. It was exciting, and then I've been fortunate to have been in the industry for a number of years after that, and have covered over 100 major championships, 13 Ryder Cup matches, just about any of the events that have been played in the Northeast. And I do travel as necessary for Golf Today, which is in London. Whenever the biggest events have taken place, Ryder Cup is an example of that. The BMW event in London. There's others that have gone on, but it's always a treat. I mean, to see the elite level players at the highest level of performance, it's fantastic. There's nothing like it. And I'll just say this real quickly. I mean, Al Barco, who was the former editor at Golf Magazine, he was another influencer for me. And he always said it best to me. He said, Matt, there's nothing like the strike of a golf club against a ball when it's hit pure. It's like a baseball bat hitting a ball. I mean, once you've heard that sound, it's infectious. Yeah. And you just want to see more, and you want to see. And if you can do it yourself, that's even more fun, okay, as opposed to watching other people do it.
Yeah. And it's actually the combination of the two that really kind of sparks the senses, right? It's the sound and the feel that that really just kind of gives you a charge. I'm really curious, was journalism always a part? Well, it was always your plan? Was that part? How did that come into your life?
Well, initially, I was in the fundraising business. That's what I became skillful at. I used to raise money. I hate to use the word hired gun, but I would be outside groups would bring me on board to raise money for charities and whatever. But I always had a writing skill, having been at the university level covering collegiate football, basketball, everything. But as it turned out, I had an opportunity to see a lot of the different people that were in the fundraising world. Sad to say, Anthony, a lot of people can be good at certain things, but you may not have a passion for doing it.
Sure.
And I had a passion for it. I should say, excuse me, I had a passion for writing that was always there. And then I just made a decision to myself, I really want to get into something else with my life. And that's where I connected into the golf lane. And it was always something, and I always have agreed with people who have said this, try to do something that you're passionate about. If you're good at it, hopefully the money will follow. But try to get involved in that lane. And I would say probably from probably in mid 20s, late 20s is when I really got involved with the golf lane completely.
Who were some of the people, I would assume, given your location in the Met area, that Dave Anderson would have been part of your inspiration? I'm sure there are others on a national level, Dan Jenkins, at some point. Who were the early influencers? You mentioned Barco a minute ago. Who were some of the other influences, and how did they influence you as a young writer?
Well, on the New Jersey scene, because that's where I came from. I mean, I got to meet a gentleman, Arthur Red Hoffman, who worked for the Star Ledger. I met him through some of the tournaments I played in. I just met him through that because he covered them. I mean, back then, as you probably well know, local newspapers did cover a lot of the events. So Star Ledger, the Staten Island Advance, the New York Times, even Daily News. Okay, they covered a lot of the events. So I'm through Red Hoffman. That was my introduction, and then Red was able to introduce me, and it really I think started around the U.S. Open in 1980 at Baltusrol, and we were fortunate that the Open was being played in the Northeast in 6 series of years. I mean, 80 was Baltusrol, 81 was Marion. 83 was Oakmont, and 84 was Wingfoot. So because of that Northeast situation, I was always there. Okay, and I was just happenstance to, I hate to say this, but be a fly on the wall. And I was able then to sit, at tables near enough to where I would meet some of these people. And Dave Anderson happened to be one that Red Hoffman introduced me to. And, I had read his stuff, and was just, blown away, um, not only by his writing skills, but by himself as a person.
Hmm.
And he had that human connection that he didn't have to lay on you his titles and what he had accomplished. It was as clear as day, but he was just a real human connection, and he gave me an unbelievable opportunity to go into areas that I may have gotten to, Anthony, but it would never have happened as fast as it did. And I'm really indebted to him for all that he did. And then from him, just by being involved with the majors and covering golf, I got to meet other key people, and then eventually I intersected with Dan Jenkins, and Dan is just a people don't realize this. Dan was one tremendous golfer. I mean, this guy could really play. He played collegiately, um, and not only that, but he was really tight with Ben Hogan, and just to hear the stories
Yeah.
to me, that was invaluable. I mean, just to because there's a connection generationally that I wasn't a part of, but now I had a firsthand person, somebody who could tell me specifically, well, this is what Hogan said or Sneed said. And then eventually, as they work their way through. But both of those men are titans in golf writing. If somebody put together an all-time writing ensemble. I mean, they're up there with Bernard Darwin, Pat Ward Thomas. I mean, Herbert Warren Wynn. I mean, you name them. I mean, Dave Anderson, Dan Jenkins, absolutely top of the notch. And I'm very indebted to both of them for giving me an opportunity to really get started in the industry.
Was there anything specific? You mentioned Dave Anderson's sort of humble persona, which I've, having since he was been honored also here at the Met Golf Writers Association. I've gotten to know a lot about him. I haven't not known him. It's been fascinating. I'm just kind of curious. Was there anything specific in terms of the machinations of journalism, of interviewing, of doing golf, covering golf that sort of specifically helped you as a young writer?
I think one of the things that Dave did more than anything, I don't think he never said the phrase, but there's a phrase that my father used to say, which is, Matt, remember, you're born with two ears and one mouth.
Yeah, right.
So
Yeah, that's good.
to be in the writing lane, it's not so much you have to have a writing style, you have to know how to write, okay? But if you don't listen real closely,
Mhm.
okay, that is an essential element. And not only that, the body language, how it's communicated. Um, Dave had a trust with the people that he covered. That doesn't mean to say he was going to do them a favor and not report what exactly happened. I
Mhm.
mean, if something happened, he's going to report it.
Mhm.
Okay. A good example of that was during the Skins game, when they had an issue between Tom Watson and Gary Player about maybe the ball being moved. And Dave said it to those players, hey, guys, I heard this. I have to cover it. I cannot. back away from a story that has been brought to my attention.
Hmm.
I think what often happens with a lot of people today is they try to create stories where there's no real sources to back that up.
Hmm.
And a lot of times those stories will fall flat on their faces.
Hmm.
So Dave was a real thorough reporter. That is his essential quality. And listening and piecing together the story and then not being afraid to ask the key questions.
Sure.
A lot of writers, Anthony, they get caught up into this thing about want to be friends.
Yeah.
If you can get a friendship, it's a plus. But Dave always told me, and I know Dan always reemphasized, your number one thing is to tell it as the reader would need it to be told. And you must make sure that the reader is always the number one situation that's involved. You got to get your facts straight. You got to report them accurately, and you have to be timely because stories will change.
Sure.
And you have to be able to, yeah, I mean, sometimes the original story you had has now been altered because additional information has come to your attention. And if you need to do it, and Dave was fast to tell me this as well as Red Hoffman, if you have to make a correction, you state it correctly. You say, hey, I messed up. It wasn't done intentionally, but then you have to own it. Your name's on that story. And you have to pay attention to that at all times. Your credibility is your calling card. You lose that, you lose everything.
You feel like more people today are more concerned about access. You said a friendship. If a friendship develops, that's great. But that's usually based on a mutual respect, a respect that you have a job to do, a respect that they have an obligation in some levels to communicate with the public on some level. It seems to me that in today's age, people are more worried about access than they are about getting the story.
Well, there's that. And, one of the things that's complicated things is you got people today that have influencers or whatever. I mean, they call themselves influencers.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what I mean, I think what happens a lot of times is that if you look at it from the player's perspective or anybody who's in the golf lane, all right. I mean, who is out there that is what they say they are? I mean, first you have to find that out. Okay. I mean, if I'm talking to somebody, I mean, just who are you and what gives you a platform of viability and credibility to have this conversation? Years ago, that wasn't the case. I mean, the newspapers, they were the ones that covered the sport. I mean, you didn't have guys go on YouTube, Instagram, and just insert themselves. I mean, the guy could have lived his whole life on a couch and never have gotten off of it. And all of a sudden he's throwing, 800-pound, barbs at whatever the player is because he saw it on television.
Right.
And a lot of players will be influenced by that. I mean, they're sensitive, obviously, to criticism. I can understand that. So I think today you have to be even more aware of the fact that you're living in a much faster world. So you got to get your story out faster. It has to be accurate. And then, if you're talking with players, my main thing with them basically is that I want to know, what were they thinking when they were playing, what happened on the golf course. It's more about on the field,
Hmm.
okay? But unfortunately, the players have to deal with off the field reporting, okay? If the guy happened to be drinking or if the guy had some other issue happen, okay? I mean, that's going to influence how they see media. And unfortunately, all it takes, Anthony, is a few bad apples, and that can poison the bushel. And everybody thinks that they're all the same, and then you have to fight against that from being seen as a pox on everybody.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's part of the business. It's also part of the business that players will have agents serve as shields, and they won't have an interview
Yeah.
set up unless they have an agreement that certain questions are not going to be asked. And then you as a writer have to determine, is the value of the subject higher than the limitations that are being presented?
Right.
And then you have to decide that. And oftentimes I'll dialogue with my editor and they'll say, is that a yes or a no? And then do we decline or do we accept?
Right. I think given, and you can speak to this, the evolution of the journalist-player relationship, I think given where we are today, I have a greater appreciation for people like Rory McIlroy as a interviewee so much because regardless throughout his career, ups and downs, he has always given a thoughtful answer, in my opinion. I don't know if you could say different.
No, I think look, Rory's had look, Anthony, let's be real, man. If we came off a golf course and we generally shoot 75 and we shot 90, and somebody puts a microphone in front of you in 30 seconds or less after you get off the 18th green, you are not going to be doing hugs and kisses with these folks. Okay.
Sure.
I mean, so I understand that sometimes you got to let guys vent a little bit. I often think sometimes it would be best if there was a little bit of time. I'm not saying you give a guy a day,
Hmm.
but give the guy 5 to 10 minutes. Let us get his thoughts together. Because when you go on camera, like I'm doing right now, every word, everything is picked up. I mean, if you looked at the camera a certain way, if you didn't look at the camera, Rory's a human being. Okay, they all are. I mean, Rory's not perfect. After the Pinehurst, debacle in 24 when he gave away the championship, he stormed out. But the next day, okay, maybe his agent pushed him, or maybe he had, a revisit of how he behaved. He came out with a statement and said, "Look, I apologize. You know, I was upset with myself, was something I shouldn't have done." That's why I admire people like Nicholas and Palmer and Gary Player, especially Jack. I mean, never turned down. You did Arnold. I mean, I only saw Arnold at the very end when he was in senior golf,
Hmm.
but they never turned down an interview. That doesn't mean to say that they're going to give you an answer that's going to be what you want. They're going to give you the answer that they believe is what the answer should be out of their mouth. But in today's world, there's so many influences. Rory, to his credit, has been on the scene a long time now. I mean, he
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
is somebody who's opened himself up. Um, I'm sure it stung him when there was discussions about how he and his wife were doing, when that was going on for a period of time.
Sure.
But, he's come through a lot of different issues, and I admire his candor
Yeah.
because, a lot of players today, sad to say, Tiger became one of those. It's name, rank, and serial number. And we're not saying anything more. And if
Right.
we get done, they often thought that going to the press tent was like going to the dentist. It's like, oh man, I got to go do this. Okay.
Right.
And
Right.
how soon is this going to be over? And you really didn't get to learn anything about them. And I understand that they have bigger fish to fry because they have sponsors. They're serving as an endorser for different products. So they have to be very mindful of what they say at any point in time.
Yeah, and I guess Tiger felt a little burnt early on in his career with the Sports Illustrated article and all that kind of thing. And I guess
I mean, he's in. Yeah, I mean, we're talking, hundreds of millions of dollars in
right,
endorsements.
right,
Um, it can change.
yeah,
Okay, sometimes people you know, make a slip of the lip. Justin Thomas's, made a comment. Um, you
right,
know,
right.
that was a homophobic slur. Okay, um, he lost his contract with Polo
Yep,
the next day.
yep,
Okay, I mean, he apologized. Okay, to be clear,
yep.
he did. And, look, we're human beings. That doesn't mean to say that people won't make mistakes. I think what the problem is that you can't forever tag somebody as being something. I
Right.
mean, they
Of course,
do
of
they
course.
do evolve. I mean, if that was the standard, then you and I and anybody else would be the same situation.
Yeah,
Okay.
a hundred
So I,
percent.
I think you have to be, again, it's a question of how a situation is handled and how, as a writer, you have to realize that the guy who Rory McIlroy was at 21, he's not 21 anymore.
Right.
Okay, he's 37 years old. He's
Yep.
married as a child. His life has evolved. Scotty Scheffler, same way. I mean, so these guys go through their phases, and then you see where their career is over that period of time. And as a writer, I think it's important to always keep the bigger picture in mind and not get locked in to a viewpoint where the facts don't support that anymore.
Sure, sure. No, I just always appreciate it, even in his press conferences. Well, let me backtrack. I will say, I wish often the guys would, if they did shoot a bad number, I mean, they are in the scoring tent. Like you have a minute to stay there, to regroup, to talk to your caddy, to whatever, if the caddy happens to be there.
I mean, we have people, Anthony, in the writing world that will ask the most stupidest questions.
that's
Okay,
that's a fair point.
and I've heard people ask this question. The guy will be at a tournament and he'll say, do you think he could win this week? Why did he come here if he didn't think he
Right.
could win?
No, it's a fair
Okay.
point.
I,
It's a fair point.
yeah. So I mean, you get writers. I mean, in fairness, if you want players to do their homework when giving an interview, then the writer's got to do the same thing.
Sure.
You got to know your subject.
Yeah.
Okay. You got to know what to say.
No. No, you're
And
right.
not be afraid. Yeah.
No, I mean, you're right. They have to deal with a lot of stupid questions, and that kind of, you would hope that they would understand who they're dealing with, and on some level, they probably see people like yourself on a weekly basis or on a fairly often basis that they get to know faces, so they know that when a real question is coming and when one isn't.
Yeah. I think some of the problems that happen is these guys are they have great communication skills in hitting the club against a ball, putting a sentence together that makes sense. That may not be something that they're really good at. So in many cases, they've hired people, to do this kind of stuff for them.
Right.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I admire the old time guys. I mean, they would sit down and they'd give you a lot of their time. And as long as you could stay on point and continually keep moving forward, in some probing fashion,
Yeah.
I think they would respect that. Okay. You show respect, you get respect. And I think that's just the common rule that everybody's got to follow when you're covering golf or any sport.
Yeah. And and it's almost like we live in an environment where today where it's hard for the player to do that in the sense that they're so worried about nutrition, recovery, preparation. All they're thinking about, they go to the press room or they go to the stand-up area, all they're thinking about is getting some food or doing whatever it is they have to get in a cold plunge and get their stretch in or masseuse or what, you know what I mean? Like I just feel like they're where Arnold Palmer or where Jack Nicklaus back in the day, they would sit down with you and have a beer and talk to you. It almost like you can't even recreate that environment today, given the circumstances of what they know as athletes and the pressures of time.
When players show up at major championships, every minute matters.
Yeah, right.
Every minute matters.
Exactly.
Okay. I mean, the last thing you want to be doing is wasting time. I mean, I'll just share with you a real quick story. I remember when
Yeah.
Steve Williams, who I get along with very well. I mean, I'm not going to allude to say that we're cocktail friends, but I
Mhm.
respected Steve Williams. I know that he could be, brusque,
Yeah.
but I asked him, I said, Steve, what's your number one job, with Tiger? He says, is make sure he doesn't get bothered by anybody. And I will make sure that I am the enforcer and keep that. I mean, when he comes on the practice tee, unless he initiates the discussion, the last thing he wants to do is have distraction.
Right. Right.
When think of it this way, Anthony, you're going to go tackle Oakland Hills or Oakmont or the Olympic Club or Bethpage. Okay, do you want to waste your time with somebody who's
Right.
going to share some joke or some story about something? Every minute matters
Sure.
because how long can you stay at the elite level to play?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a small
How
window.
many majors in a lifetime will you ever get a chance to play in? So every minute matters.
Yeah.
And I learned that from people like Dave and Dan Jenkins. I mean, a lot of their stuff was done pre-tournament. They actually got the guys before they got to the site and got a lot of their homework done. And I think that's a real good lesson for anybody is get stuff done ahead of time so that you respect the time that they have when they're on site. When they're there, it's showtime. They got to be ready to rock and roll because they don't know how many times they're going to be in that lane.
Yeah. No, it's true. It is. It's a small window, even though that for golfers it's a larger window than most other professional athletes. It's
Oh,
still
well, it's a larger window that you can stay around.
right.
It's just as short a window as saying, hey, can you actually win this thing?
And yeah,
Okay. And,
exactly.
and frankly, I don't think that time frame has really changed for that much. I mean, I think you got about a 6 to 8 year window of playing at the elite level. Now, there are guys who have done beyond that. Okay. But that's more the exception than the rule.
Yeah.
You have a window. And if you can't hit it at that point, you'll still be around, you'll still contend, but come late Sundays, final 9 holes,
Yeah.
no, it's just not going to happen.
I want to shift gears from journalism to golfing, and that is your association with the top100golfcourses.com and the Metropolitan Golf area where the Metropolitan Golf Writers Association is located. We are, it's, it's an embarrassment of riches in the in the Met Golf area of golf courses that we have. I'm just curious, as someone who has seen, I have so many questions for you regarding the golf courses, but where do you put the Met Golf area compared to a Philly, compared to a California? Some of the others that have good stretches and comparable, but maybe not equal to. Where do you put the Metropolitan Golf scene in terms of its rankings, if we're going to do rankings?
Well, I'll say this globally on the private club side, and that's the key definition because it's not always on the public side,
Right,
but on the private club side, there is no section like the New York Met section.
right,
When you combine New York, Northern New Jersey, all of Long Island, Westchester, Fairfield, and the Hudson Valley, the depth of golf courses
right.
is unmistakable. It's just there's no way to describe. I mean, if you look at any top 100 list in the United States, you could easily throw in 20, 25 golf courses just from the section I just described. Now there are other areas, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, well, somewhat Los Angeles, Chicago,
Hmm.
um, some parts of Florida, okay, the Carolinas. They'll have their pockets, but nothing of the depth of the golf. I mean, that's played. I mean, we're talking sites that have had U.S. Opens, PGAs, Ryder Cups,
Yeah.
and then there's really excellent member clubs that won't be able to host a major tournament, but yet they're still fantastic clubs. The only thing is, and I have to say that caveat is that it's on the private side,
Yeah.
so you have to have some connection. There are some really outstanding public facilities. Clearly, Bethpage
Hmm.
is the flagship of them
Sure.
all in the New York Mets section. But there's others. Crystal Springs,
Yeah.
has a multi facility.
Yep.
A lot of the counties
Yep.
have really good taxpayer-owned golf courses. You go to
Yep.
Monmouth County in New Jersey. There's Eisenhower.
Yep.
They have in Nassau County, and there's others.
Valley Owen in Jersey
Yeah,
is also really
right. I
good.
mean, so you have avenues to play, but when we talk about how things stack up globally on the private scene, the New York section, from my experience, if it's not number one, then I can't see how it could be any less than second or third
Right.
globally. It's just the depth is unmistakable. And we're fortunate, Anthony, that the golden age of architecture, a lot of the guys who designed, Donald Ross, A.W. Tillinghast, Seth Rayner, the father of American golf, Charles Blair McDonald,
Yep.
creating the National Golf Links on Long Island. They were all here at some point.
Yep.
Robert Trent Jones lived most of his life in Montclair, New Jersey. So we had a range of not only talented people, but we also had great topography, and we had some of the best minds that could put together a lot of the golf that we see today. And it still is amazing the depth of the golf courses that are here. Period.
When you're doing your rankings, what are some of what's your checklist? How do you assess if it's going to be?
Well, I would say number one that you start with the site, like where is the course located?
Mhm.
Okay, I mean that's there. One of the virtues that the Golden Age architects had, Anthony, is they didn't have to worry about environmental regulations that you see today.
Right.
So if they wanted to fill in a creek or if they wanted to take trees down, nobody knew because nobody was even out there in some of these places.
Right.
It's a different situation now. So generally says I would look at the land. I mean, look what Samuel Morse did when he made sure that the ocean holes at Pebble were to stay as golf holes and not real estate.
Right.
I mean, think of how that turns golf history right there on that whole discussion.
Sure.
What you look at any of the golf courses, very rarely do you find an ordinary piece of land that turns itself into a masterpiece of a golf course. There are very few exceptions to that. Generally speaking, the architect and the benefactor, the person who owns the property,
Right.
they have come to an agreement that that particular site will produce the best golf. So that's the starting point. If the land you look at the great golf courses, generally that land situation is what has provided the memorability that you will have with you long after the round is done.
Yeah.
And then that's the starting point. That's where it starts. The second part is how well is the golf course routed. In other words, when the architect came to the site, there are certain attributes that a site has on the land. Well, how well did he route the golf course? And you get people all the time, myself included, will say, well, I think he could have did this or he could have did that. The reality is this is not about drawing on a piece of paper. you know,
Yeah.
this is civil engineering.
Right.
Okay. This is about drainage as well as it is, making world-class golf holes. Okay.
Or budgetary constraints. That could be another reason.
And then
I think.
budget. Right. I mean, it's not like they have an unlimited checkbook that says we're just going to keep doing it until we get it right.
Sure.
So how well is the golf course routed? And then you get to see, the placement of the holes. And I describe a great golf course, Anthony, in real simple term in baseball terms. There are guys that can really throw the fastball. They're a thrower. They're not a pitcher.
Right.
Great golf courses are pitchers. They can vary the speed and they can tell you the different type of pitch that they're going to throw: curveball, changeup, slider, four-seam fastball. Great golf courses have tremendous variety, so the player has to adjust constantly. For wind direction, there's another factor that's involved.
Sure.
So all of these things are a part of it. Clearly, the dessert on the ice cream is the conditioning. So if the golf course is not prepared correctly, then the architecture can't come to the highest of levels because it's being held back by conditioning that prevents that. Although there could be a golf course that's there, it's just that we're only seeing the bones of it.
Right.
And Bethpage was like that.
No,
Bethpage was like that for many years.
100%.
Right.
Sure.
But the bones were there, and then you brought in a skilled team. Reese Jones came in, Craig Courier, New York State, and then resources were there. And then, of course, the U.S. Open twice, and then PGA Championship, Ryder Cup. So it elevated the stature. But anybody in the New York area would have always known that Bethpage was a significant test of golf. It just needed to be brought up to the level that it could be. And that's a tremendous success story.
You bring up a good point about conditioning. I think a lot of people who don't pay as much attention, let's say, think a great golf course is, just because it's in fine condition. And there's a big difference between aesthetics and strategy. And so, just like to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, conditioning is great, but a golf course needs a strategy.
Well, I'll put it this way. Conditioning is like makeup.
Right.
Okay. You can apply makeup to somebody who looks hideous, and all of a sudden it looks like, wow, this guy is really handsome, or this woman is really beautiful.
Right.
But the makeup is the addition, is the final part. That's why I said it's the cherry on top of the sundae, the dessert. But the reality is the core is the land that it's on, the routing of how the holes are set up, and then the variety of shots that you've got to play. You got to demonstrate skill with 14 clubs. The conditioning has sometimes been used as a elevation tool in the minds of some people, where they look at that as the dominant aspect. In other words, they never looked any deeper than that.
Exactly.
And some people, look, Anthony, if the food cart comes around and doesn't have a drink or a sandwich on it, man, the guy may just be going ballistic that somehow or another, he didn't also have a shower head that covered his entire body. So he's starting to rate on other things that have nothing to do with the golf course.
Right.
Okay. Whatsoever. And that happens a lot of times. And we're all, and people are going to be influenced by certain things that carry more weight, but ultimately it's from the first tee to the 18th green. That's what you're looking at.
Sure.
And the rest, well, that's an add-on. That's a benefit.
Right.
But look, human beings are what they are. I will say this much. There's a quote from Tom Doak in his original confidential guidebook where he says, if you and I, Anthony, were to play, and let's just say we had backgrounds that are similar, we've seen a lot of places, we'll probably agree on 80% of what we see out there. The other 20%, it's just a question of, Anthony, you may be a guy who plays a right to left shot, and I play left to right. So holes that go to the left, you're going to like, I'm not going to like. Okay.
Right.
So this is a subjective matter. There is no way that you can, definitively say, that certain things are better than other things. But I do believe you can categorize golf courses in groupings.
Right.
So I'm not a fan of a golf course when you see the magazine say this is 23rd versus 82nd. I just don't see that.
Right.
I think that groupings of courses can be done, groupings of 10 or 20. And then you could say, they're in the same league. I mean, National Golf Links and Shinnecock are superior world-class golf courses. I
Yeah.
mean,
100%.
how do you lose if you play one versus the other?
No.
Wingfoot West is the same. Um, I mean, those are the things that I think people need to keep in mind. Um, and I have to say this, to the credit of a lot of clubs in the Met section, a lot of them have realized that they need to understand what was the original roots of the golf course that was there.
Sure.
And a lot of times these courses went off into different directions because they made mistakes. And now a lot of them have seen fit and they've done a superlative job in a lot of the cases. I mean, Baldwin just went through a major effort with Gil Hanse, and it's done a spectacular job of reestablishing the Tillinghast connection to both the lower and the upper
Yeah.
golf courses. And
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Yeah. No, that's a beautiful property. I was fortunate to be able to interview people from the agronomy team there just to talk about that. I mean, that's a tremendous project. I'm curious, do you think, real quick, because I want to transition to the Met Golf Writers Association in general, and that is, do you think we're in a sort of, architecturally speaking, a golden age part two?
I think that's a good way to put it. I think the next generation of people that are in the business
Yeah.
has really come to light. I mean, Andrew Green, Kyle France,
Yeah.
Jeff Stein, from lives in New York.
Yeah.
They're all younger participants.
Sure.
Of course, the other guys that came up. I mean, Tom Doak, Gil Hanse, Ben Crenshaw, and Bill Core.
Yeah.
Jim Urbina. I mean, there's a number of guys that have really come forward. Um, but I do think that there's a lot that has gone back to what was the golden age of architecture, and you're seeing a lot of these facilities that are in our area, especially the New York section, have come back to realize that what was designed was tremendous. They got off track in some way,
Yeah.
and now they've really realized what their potential is. And I really think that this next generation of young architects is really picking up on that and going forward. And you're seeing a lot of that work not only in the New York area, but nationwide and in some instances in the global scene as well.
Sure. Sure. I want to transition to the Met Golf Writers Association. We are talking about the Met Golf area in general, but you've been a part of it much longer than I have. This year's dinner is Tuesday, October 6th at Mountain Ridge, which I was fortunate enough to play, and it's a tremendous golf course in its own right. The ladies just played the Mizuho there, and they actually had a repeat winner. Both repeat winners, the AJA winner and the professional, which is amazing. But we're having our dinner there. I want you to just, and this year we're honoring Judy Rankin, Mike Wan, and Damon Hack. I'm just, maybe you can speak on a little bit of the history of the Met Golf Writers Association dinner, and since you've been a part more of them, and if you could share anything that you know about Judy Rankin and Mike Wan and Damon Hack, if you could.
I mean, I had the pleasure many years ago to be at the Met Golf Writers Dinner and seeing people like Nancy Lopez, Johnny Miller, um, the Troika, a player, Palmer, and Nicholas.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the winners of the Gold Tee Award. That is a who's who
Yeah.
of people that have played golf. Okay. And when I was younger, just to go to the dinner, and it used to be held, I mean, it was held forever, obviously, in either Westchester, they may have been in Greenwich, I think one or two times, but um, to see them, I mean, this is it. I mean, when you're in your late 20s, early 30s,
Yeah.
this is not the person on TV anymore. This isn't some cardboard cutout. This is the real person. And you met them at the cocktail receiving line. And then obviously, if you had an introduction made, I mean, I mentioned Dave Anderson. I mean, Dave would take me around and say, "Well, let me introduce you to Matt Ward." Excuse me, Matt Ward is irrelevant. It's Matt Ward is being introduced to you, okay, as whoever that person was. So, when you have an event of that caliber, and obviously it raises money for the Caddy Scholarship Program, which is tremendous, okay,
Yep.
to provide funds for that. Um, it's great. As far as the honorees are, I mean, Judy Rankin to me is just superlative. I miss her
Me too.
on television. I think she was really the consummate reporter. Um, she never, got hyperbolic about, oh man, that's such a great shot. And she would be fawning. Like you see that on television. I mean, people are tapping in putts from 2 feet. You think that they were solving cancer. I mean, the way this guy was talked about. I mean, they would go wild. But
Yeah.
Judy Rankin, tremendous. I mean, I'm so pleased that the board of the association, will honor her with the Gold Tee Award. And Mike Wan, as CEO of USGA, Mike was a tireless advocate of women's golf when he was commissioner, and now as CEO of the USGA is now taking his career to an even higher visibility platform. And I'm great to see him honored. And Damon Hack, I've seen Damon. I don't know him that well
Okay.
personally,
Yep.
but I certainly admire what he has done through his career,
Yeah.
and what he's done. Um, each of these people and the other people who will be awarded at Mountain Ridge in October,
Hmm.
um, they're all tremendous contributors to the game. Some people, Anthony, have a higher platform where you see them more than others, but that doesn't mean to say that there's others who haven't done tremendous things at a different level, but they just don't have the visibility scene that you would see.
Yeah.
And there's a great feeling. I'm really happy that the writers will be in New Jersey for the first time, and I'm so happy to see that the people who come to the dinner will be able to see the very things that I just said, which is meeting some of the finest individuals, not only the awardees, but the different clubs that attend and will send, their own delegations there.
Sure. Sure. No, I mean, you look at the names, Rankin, Wan, and Hack. The one thing you could say right off the bat is good people.
Yeah.
I've had the fortunate experience of interviewing Damon when I had my radio show, and just really and talk to him after, and he's just a really good guy. And Mike Wan, I think, is probably one of the most prolific leaders we've had in the golf space. I mean, I can't speak to Dean Beeman. I wasn't, at that time. But Mike Wan, in terms of my era, has emerged as a pretty prolific and formidable leader in the golf space.
I mean, I think, one of the things that comes up is, you need to have the right people at the right time.
Yeah,
And a lot of this is about, people, when you look at people like Damon and Mike and people like that, the players are the ones who are out in front of the audience.
yeah,
But you have to have great stage hands. You have to have people that are behind the scenes, okay, that really pull it together. And these individuals, along with many others, we're part of that. And I think it's great that we come together in the Met section where all the key people
yeah.
will be there as a who's who of the golf community, and obviously what it does to help the Caddy Scholarship Program and the beneficiaries of that. That's tremendous, because there aren't many times, Anthony, where the golf world comes together in a real broad sense. And the Met writers, going back to the early 50s, is a tremendous situation. And like I said before, if you look at the names, I mean,
Yeah.
that's Hall of Fame material without question, and in a lot of different capacities, not just people who played the game, but did other things within the game itself. It's tremendous.
I do want to mention too, Joe LaCava is being honored as well, the LaCava family, and
Yeah.
he is a outstanding guy. I got to tell you, he was a funny story. I was going to play Bethpage Black at one point, and I was in the pro shop, and there was a bunch of guys kind of off to my side, and I was ahead of them, and a guy comes up and says, "Listen, we're late, or we're running late. We have to get a caddy. You mind if we cut you. And I said, yeah, no. I said, that's fine, no problem. So they go ahead and they're trying to procure a caddy for their round because they're playing the black. And little did I know, and then I noticed back a couple people back is Joe LaCava. Now, I felt a little bad, but I had a radio show. I noticed it was him. So I waited. I went outside. I waited when Joe came out. I said, Joe, if you don't mind. And this Joe was not the person who was the spearhead. He was like off in the back. I said, I'd love to have you on the show. I know your time is valuable, blah, blah, blah. So I gave him my number. And I thought it was a long shot, but at the time he was pretty, pretty well known and, caddying for Tiger and whatnot. And I tell you, 6 months later, he called me. He's like, I didn't forget you. And he was like, I do want to do your show. I'm happy to do it. And, maybe it wasn't 6 months, but it was a while. And I was like, I thought it was a one-off. But, just, very professional, just a really good guy. We had a great time on the show talking about New York sports. He loves the Rangers like I do. He loves the Giants like I do. So we really had a great show. But, just another good guy in the business, I think.
Well, I mean, the thing about a lot of these people is, you know, you have to have a passion, Anthony, at the end of the day. That can't be masked. And, clearly everybody has a role to play.
Yeah.
I think it's very understated how important the caddy player dynamic is certainly at the elite level.
Yeah.
I mean, you're joined at the hip with somebody, and there's no timeouts in golf. Okay, this isn't basketball. Oh, let's go talk it over with the coaches, and we'll figure it out. You're out there in real time.
Life comes at you
and
fast out there.
yeah, and then the old adage is you have to have a caddy who knows diplomatically when to really light a fire underneath your butt, and also when to be quiet.
Yeah.
When to let the moment just be what it is. Um, and I've interviewed a number of the caddies, and that in itself is a delicate dance. You just don't know how that's going to be played. But you look at all the great players, almost to a rule, they've had a steady player or a steady caddy on that bag.
100.
I mean, Bones Mackay was with Mickelson. Okay. I mean, Steve Williams with Tiger. Fluff was with Tiger for a period of time. Okay. I mean, Joe LaCava. Okay. Steve Williams. Okay. With Greg Norman, Ray Floyd. All of these people are an invaluable part. And I think I think sometimes what happens is when you tell the story, like you just mentioned,
Yeah.
it's important to see what their side was,
Yeah.
what they've done from that capacity. I'll share with you real quick on my side. I actually caddied for a couple of weeks at the old course at St. Andrews for a story. And there was a group of players, and the guys were upset because they figured they were going to get some guy from Braveheart dressed up in Scottish kilts. And I tell the guys that I'm from Clifton, New Jersey, and it's like, man, we came all this way to have a guy from Jersey caddy for us, and and it was really funny. But the bottom line of it is, I was able to go out, and I thank the RNA and St. Andrews for the opportunity, and I was out there to sample the old course through the eyes of many different people, not just Tom Watson's or Seve Ballesteros is playing, but just the ordinary Scott or the ordinary international visitor. And, the dynamic of player and caddy is vastly more important than I think many people. And I credit the clubs in the Mets section that have maintained that. And it's a challenge.
Yes.
It's a challenge to find the right people.
Yep.
But if you do have it and it's done well, it's an invaluable part of the game.
100%. Matt Ward, senior editor at Golf Today, and also part of the Golf 100, Top 100 golfcourses.com. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really a pleasure connecting with you and chatting with you. We really appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure today, Anthony.
And look forward to sharing a cocktail with you at the dinner.
I already have the glass picked out.
All right. That's Matt Ward from from Golf Today. Thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate you. Thank you for joining us on the Met Golf Writers Association podcast. Take care.